3 days after moving into the apartment I had dreamed about for years, I received a voice message from an unknown number. The woman's voice was trembling. "I saw what your husband does when you're not home." My heart stopped. I listened to the recording again, my hands trembling, trying to understand. Then another message appeared. "You need to meet me. Right now. Alone. And don't tell him anything." I didn't fully understand what it meant, but something deep inside me knew whatever I was about to uncover would change everything forever. "I'm so grateful you're here with me. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. I'd love to know where this story reached you. And if it resonated, hit that subscribe button so we can continue this journey together. Please note this story blends fictional elements with educational insights. Any similarity to names or places is coincidental, but the message carries value I hope will serve you. 12 years. That was how long Nathan and I had worked toward this moment, standing in the living room of apartment 12 at the Granville Tower, champagne flutes in hand, believing that we had finally made it. The apartment was everything I had sketched in my notebooks during those lean years. 15-foot ceilings with original crown molding, wide plank oak floors that caught the amber glow of wrought iron sconces. The tall windows framed the historic district, like a postcard St. Michael's spire rising beyond the gas lamps flickering to life below. I turned to Nathan, who stood near the marble fireplace, with his sleeves rolled up, a half smile playing at his lips. At 42, he still had the build of someone who worked with his hands, though these days he spent more time in boardrooms than on construction sites. His real estate development firm had grown from a two-man operation into something that mattered in Charleston enough to afford this place. "Do you like it?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "I designed half of it in my head years ago," I said. As an interior architect, I had poured my aesthetic into dozens of other people's homes. This one was mine, ours. He crossed the room and handed me a glass. The champagne was cold, the bubbles rising in perfect spirals. "To new beginnings, Diana," he said. "The past stays behind that door." I clinked my glass against his, and just as I did, I heard a faint thud from somewhere deep in the walls, like something shifting in the bones of the building. I paused. "Did you hear that?" Nathan glanced toward the wall, unbothered. "Old building. The pipes are still settling. Granville was built in the 1920s, plenty of character." I nodded. Nathan worked in development. He understood these buildings better than I did. If he said it was nothing, it was nothing. I took a sip and let the moment settle. This was what we had worked for. 12 years ago, I had been 28 and drowning. My mother, Catherine, had just died cancer, quick and brutal, and I was alone in a city that suddenly felt too big. Owen, my younger brother, had disappeared not long after the funeral. One day, he was there, angry and grieving, and the next he was gone. No note, no forwarding address, just gone. Nathan had appeared in my life like an answer I hadn't known I needed. We met at a gallery opening, one of those awkward networking events I only attended because a client insisted. He had been standing near a sculpture, looking as out of place as I felt. We started talking, and an hour passed without my noticing. He was 30, then ambitious but grounded, someone who listened when I spoke about my mother, about Owen, about the weight of losing everything at once. He didn't try to fix it, he just stayed. Within 6 months, we were living together. Within a year, we were married. And now, 12 years later, we were here, standing in the apartment I had dreamed about since I was a girl, touring Charleston's historic homes with my mother. "Do you ever think about him?" Nathan asked, as if reading my mind. "Owen." He nodded. I looked down at my glass. "Sometimes, I wish he could see this, see that I'm okay." Nathan set his glass on the mantel and wrapped his arms around me from behind his chin, resting on my shoulder. "You did everything you could, Diana. He made his choice." I leaned into him, closing my eyes. Nathan was right. Owen had left. I had stayed. And I had built a life. The city sounds drifted through the open windows. Distant car horns, low conversation from the street below. I thought about the years that had led us here. The early struggles when Nathan's firm was just getting off the ground and I was freelancing out of a converted garage. The late nights drafting proposals, the arguments over money, the slow climb towards stability. We had earned this apartment, this view, this moment. I traced the rim of my champagne flute with one finger. "It doesn't feel real yet," I said softly. "It will," Nathan promised. "Give it time." He kissed the top of my head, and I felt the tension I had been carrying for months begin to ease. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was the fresh start we needed. The past 12 years had been a long road, grief and ambition tangled together, punctuated by small victories and quiet compromises. But we had made it. We were here. Later that night, I stood on the balcony while Nathan unpacked in the bedroom. The October air was cool against my skin, carrying the faint scent of salt from the harbor. Below me, the historic district glowed softly under the gas lamps. Couples strolled along the cobblestone streets. A horse-drawn carriage clattered past, the guide's voice echoing up in fragments. I thought about Owen again, wondered where he was, if he was happy, if he ever thought about me. I hoped he had found peace wherever he was. I hoped he had built something good. I didn't let myself think about the alternative, that something terrible had happened to him, that his disappearance wasn't a choice, but something darker. Nathan had suggested it once years ago after too much wine at dinner. What if he didn't leave Diana? What if someone took him? I had shut the conversation down immediately. I couldn't live in that kind of uncertainty. It was easier to believe Owen had walked away, that he was out there somewhere living his own life. Easier, but not necessarily true. I shook the thought away and went inside. Nathan was already in bed, one arm stretched across my pillow. I slipped in beside him and he pulled me close without waking. His breathing was steady, rhythmic, safe. I closed my eyes and let the sounds of the city lull me toward sleep. The distant hum of traffic, the creak of old pipes settling, the faint whisper of wind through the wrought iron balcony. I felt safe, I felt home. I didn't know that 6 meters below me, in the darkness of the Civil War-era tunnels beneath the Granville Tower, my brother was listening to the sound of my footsteps, the only reminder he had that I was still alive. The sound started on the second night, faint, rhythmic, coming from somewhere inside the walls. I woke Saturday morning to sunlight streaming through the tall windows, the kind of clear October light that made everything look sharper, more real. Nathan had already left for a site inspection, something about foundation issues at a commercial project downtown. He had kissed my forehead on his way out, whispering that he would be back by dinner. I spent the day unpacking. Boxes lined the hallway, each one labeled in my careful handwriting: kitchen, glassware bedroom, linens office, files. I moved through the apartment methodically, finding homes for our things. The marble countertops in the kitchen caught the light just right. The walk-in closet in the master bedroom was exactly the kind of space I had dreamed about when I was sketching floor plans for other people. By late afternoon, I had made real progress. The living room was nearly done, books on the shelves, framed prints leaning against the walls waiting to be hung. I stood back and surveyed my work, feeling a quiet pride. This was mine. Ours. Nathan came home after 7, his shirt rumpled, smelling faintly of concrete dust. "Long day?" I asked. "Foundation's worse than we thought," he said, loosening his tie. "But we'll fix it." We ordered takeout Thai food from a place on King Street and ate on the balcony, watching the gas lamps flicker on below. The air was cool, comfortable. Nathan told me about the project, about the contractor who was cutting corners, about the client who wanted marble where marble didn't belong. I listened, asked questions, let the conversation carry us through the meal. It was after we had gone to bed that I heard it. A faint thump, 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 rhythmic and deliberate, coming from somewhere near the pantry. I sat up, straining to listen. Nathan stirred beside me. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. He opened one eye. "Hear what?" "That sound, like knocking." He listened for a moment, then sighed and swung his legs out of bed. "I'll check." I followed him into the kitchen, where he opened the pantry door and peered inside. Nothing. He pressed his palm against the wall, testing. "Radiator," he said. "Old buildings like this, the heating system makes noise when it cycles. You'll get used to it." It didn't sound like a radiator. "Diana." He turned to face me, his expression patient but tired. "It's a 100-year-old building. There are going to be sounds, pipes expanding, wood settling air in the ducts. It's normal." I nodded, though something about the rhythm of the sound, 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more, felt deliberate. Human. But Nathan was already heading back to bed, and I followed, pulling the covers up to my chin and willing myself to ignore it. Sunday morning, we drove to the Harris Teeter on East Bay Street. The store was crowded, families pushing carts, tourists buying bottled water and snacks. Nathan filled the cart with staples, while I wandered the aisles picking out coffee beans, fresh bread, a bottle of wine for dinner. We were in the produce section when I heard my name, Diana. I turned, and there she was. Eleanor Fairbanks, standing by the citrus display in a pale blue cardigan and pearls, her silver hair pinned back in an elegant twist. She looked exactly as I remembered her, though it had been years since I had seen her. 72 now, but still commanding, still graceful. "Eleanor," I breathed, and before I could say anything else, she had pulled me into a hug. "Look at you," she said, holding me at arm's length. "Your mother would be so proud, sweetheart." My throat tightened. Eleanor had been my mother's closest friend. They had known each other since college, raised their children in parallel, spent countless afternoons drinking iced tea on each other's porches. When my mother died, Eleanor had been at the funeral, one of the few people whose presence had felt like an anchor in the chaos. "I didn't know you lived at the Granville," I said. "8th floor," she said, smiling. "I've been there for 5 years now. When I heard someone had moved into 12, I hoped it might be you. Nathan mentioned you were looking." Nathan had joined us by then, and Eleanor greeted him warmly. They exchanged pleasantries, something about a roofing project Eleanor was coordinating for the building's common areas. Nathan knew everyone, it seemed. That was part of what made him good at his job. "You must come for tea," Eleanor said, turning back to me. "Next week, perhaps. I'd love to catch up properly." "I'd like that," I said, and I meant it. Eleanor was a connection to my mother, to a time when things had felt simpler. We parted ways at the checkout, and Nathan and I drove home with groceries piled in the back seat. "She's a nice woman," Nathan said, active in the building's board. "She's been helpful with getting approvals for some of the historical preservation work." I nodded, watching the city slide past the window. I felt lighter than I had in days, as though Eleanor's presence had been a small gift. That night the sounds returned. I was reading in bed, Nathan already asleep beside me, when I heard a soft scratching like nails dragging across wood. It was coming from the wall behind the headboard. I set my book down, listening. The scratching stopped, then started again. Deliberate. Insistent. "Nathan," I whispered, shaking his shoulder. "Nathan, wake up." He groaned, rolling over. "What?" "Listen." We both went still. Silence. Then faintly the scratching resumed. "It's in the wall," I said. Nathan sat up, rubbing his face. "It's probably a mouse. Old buildings, Diana. I'll call someone to check the walls tomorrow." "It doesn't sound like a mouse." "Then what does it sound like?" His tone was sharper, now edged with frustration. I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know. But the rhythm of it, the pauses, the repetition, it felt intentional. It felt like someone trying to communicate. And "You're stressed," Nathan said, his voice softer now. "Moving is stressful. You're imagining things. It's normal." I wanted to argue, but I was too tired. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was letting the stress of the move get to me. Maybe the sounds were just sounds, nothing more. But that night I dreamed of Owen for the first time in months. He was calling my name, his voice echoing from somewhere I couldn't reach. I searched room after room, door after door, but I couldn't find him. I woke at 3 in the morning, my heart pounding, and in the silence of the dark apartment, I heard it. Faint, desperate. I whispered so quiet I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. "Diana?" It was coming from inside the wall. I sat frozen, staring at the plaster and the dim glow of the streetlights outside. My brother was dead. He had been gone for 12 years. This wasn't possible. Was it? Monday morning, 11:47 a.m. I was sketching cabinet layouts for a client's kitchen renovation at my studio when my phone buzzed with a message that would shatter everything I thought I knew. Hoffman and Company Design Studio occupied a narrow storefront 3 blocks up King Street, sandwiched between an art gallery and a coffee shop that perpetually smelled of cinnamon. I had opened it 4 years ago, after years of freelancing from a cramped home office. The space was small but meticulously curated, exposed brick walls, tall windows that flooded the room with natural light, and a long oak table where I spread blueprints and material samples for clients. That morning, I was meeting with a couple from the French Quarter who wanted to modernize their 1850s townhouse kitchen while preserving the original crown molding. I had just finished sketching a compromise custom cabinetry that would hide modern appliances while maintaining the historic proportions when my phone vibrated across the table. Unknown number, a voice message. I almost ignored it. Spam calls were relentless these days. But something instinct, maybe, or the lingering unease from the sounds in the walls made me excuse myself from the table and step into the back office. I pressed play. Mrs. Hoffman. The voice was female, low and strained, as though the speaker had been crying. My name is Lauren. I used to live in your apartment. I have audio evidence of what your husband has done. Meet me at White Point Garden at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Come alone. Don't tell Nathan. The message ended. I stood frozen, staring at the phone. My hands were shaking. I played it again and again, 3 times, trying to parse meaning from the words. I used to live in your apartment. Audio evidence of what your husband has done. Don't tell Nathan. I forced air into my lungs. This had to be a mistake, a scam, someone trying to extort money or cause trouble. But the woman's voice Lauren she had said didn't sound calculating. She sounded terrified. I saved the message and returned to the front room where my clients were studying the sketches I had left on the table. I apologized, told them a family emergency had come up, and rescheduled for later in the week. They left looking concerned, and I locked the studio door behind them. For the next 3 hours, I paced the narrow space between my drafting table and the window, replaying the message, trying to decide what to do. If this was real, if this woman truly had information about Nathan, what kind of information? An affair, financial fraud, and why reach out to me now, days after we had moved into the apartment? If it was a trap, what was the goal? Blackmail, revenge? But the tone of her voice kept pulling me back. She wasn't demanding money. She wasn't threatening me. She was afraid. I thought about the sounds in the walls, the rhythmic knocking on Saturday night, the scratching behind the headboard Sunday evening, the whisper of my name at 3 in the morning, so faint I had almost convinced myself it was a dream. Nathan had dismissed every single instance. The radiator, a mouse, stress from the move. You're imagining things, Diana. What if I hadn't been imagining anything? At 2:30, I grabbed my purse, locked the studio, and drove toward the southern tip of the peninsula. White Point Garden stretched along the harbor, a sprawling park shaded by gnarled live oaks draped in Spanish moss. Tourists wandered the paths, photographing the antebellum cannons and the view of Fort Sumter in the distance. I found a bench near the water, away from the crowds, and waited. At exactly 3 o'clock, a woman approached. She was younger than I had expected, mid-30s, with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She wore faded jeans and a thin blue jacket, and her hands trembled as she sat down beside me. "Mrs. Hoffman," she asked quietly. I nodded. "I'm Lauren Chase." She pulled an old driver's license from her pocket and held it out. The photo matched Lauren Chase, age 37. The address listed was the Granville Tower, apartment 12. My stomach dropped. "I lived there from 2012 to 2024, she said, her voice barely audible over the rustle of the oak leaves above us. "I know you just moved in. I know Nathan told you it was a fresh start." I couldn't speak, my throat had closed. Lauren pulled out her phone, scrolling through files with hands that shook so badly she almost dropped it. "I need you to hear something. I recorded this 2 weeks ago, right before I left." She pressed play. The audio was grainy, muffled by distance or walls, but unmistakable. A man's voice, Nathan's voice, echoed through the tinny speaker. "Bring the tray down to the south tunnel. Make sure he stays quiet. Owen can't know his sister is right above him." A second voice, rougher and older. "What if he tries to run again?" Nathan's voice, cold and flat. "He won't. He's been down there 12 years. He's broken." My phone slipped from my hands and clattered onto the bench. The world tilted. The sounds of the park children laughing, a dog barking, the distant hum of a boat motor, faded into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. "Owen?" I whispered. The word felt foreign in my mouth. "My brother Owen." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "Yes. No." I shook my head violently. "No, that's impossible. Owen died 12 years ago. He disappeared after my mother's funeral. He was grieving, he was angry, and he left. He left. Nathan took him," Lauren said, her voice breaking. "I don't know why. I don't know what happened between them. But Owen didn't leave, Mrs. Hoffman. Nathan has been keeping him in the tunnels beneath your building for 12 years. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to hold the pieces of myself together. 12 years. 12 years I had mourned my brother, believing he had abandoned me in my grief. 12 years I had woken up beside Nathan, trusted him, loved him while Owen was 6 meters below us, locked in the dark. Why didn't you go to the police? My voice came out hoarse, broken. Lauren looked away, her jaw tight. I was afraid. Nathan is careful. He has connections, and She stopped, swallowing hard. I wasn't strong enough to fight him. But you are. You have to be. Where is Owen now? I managed to ask. In the tunnels under the building, the old Civil War tunnels. I don't know how Nathan accesses them, but there's an entrance somewhere in the basement. I heard him go down there at night. I heard... Her voice cracked. I heard sounds, knocking, someone crying. I told myself I was imagining it, but I wasn't. She stood abruptly, glancing over her shoulder as though expecting Nathan to materialize from the crowd. If you confront him, he'll move Owen, or kill him. You have to be smarter than Nathan, Mrs. Hoffman. Your brother's life depends on it. Wait. I reached for her, but she was already walking away, disappearing into the stream of tourists before I could stop her. I don't remember driving back to the studio. I don't remember sitting down at my desk or locking the door. All I remember is the audio playing on repeat in my mind, Nathan's voice cold and detached, talking about my brother like he was an object to be managed. He's been down there 12 years. He's broken. I thought about the nights Nathan had held me while I cried about Owen. The times he had reassured me that my brother's disappearance wasn't my fault. The way he had looked into my eyes and told me Owen had made his own choices. All of it had been a lie. Lauren's final warning echoed in my head. You have to be smarter than him. Smarter. I had to be smarter. But how do you outsmart a monster you've been sleeping beside for 12 years? Pretending everything was normal while sitting across from a monster at the dinner table, that was the hardest thing I had ever done. I pulled into the parking garage beneath the Granville Tower at 6 o'clock, my hands still shaking on the steering wheel. I had driven from White Point Garden to the studio and back home on autopilot, my mind looping endlessly through the audio. He's been down there 12 years. He's broken. I sat in the car for 5 minutes, forcing myself to breathe, rehearsing what I would say when I walked through the door. Act normal. Don't let him see. Don't let him know. When I finally stepped into the apartment, Nathan was in the kitchen stirring a pot of marinara sauce. The smell of garlic and basil filled the air. Classical music played softly from the speaker on the counter. He looked up and smiled. "There you are," he said. "I was starting to worry. How was your day, sweetheart?" I set my purse on the counter, willing my hands to stop trembling. Busy. A couple of clients needed last-minute changes to their plans. Sounds stressful. He turned back to the stove, tasting the sauce, adjusting the seasoning. I thought we could use a home-cooked meal. We've been eating takeout all week. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. I watched him move around the kitchen, the same hands that had built this life with me, the same hands that had held me through my grief, the same hands that had kept my brother locked in a tunnel for 12 years. "Wine?" Nathan asked, holding up a bottle of red. "Sure." He poured 2 glasses and handed one to me. I took it, careful to keep my grip steady, and forced myself to take a sip. The wine tasted like ash. We sat down at the table, and Nathan served the pasta homemade fettuccine with marinara, a simple salad on the side. It looked perfect. Normal. Safe. "This is really good," I said, though I could barely taste it. Nathan smiled. "I'm glad. I figured we should start establishing some routines here. Make it feel like home." Home. The word made my stomach twist. Owen was 6 meters below us, and Nathan was talking about routines. "How was your day?" I asked, the question automatic. "Long. We're dealing with some permitting issues on the East Bay project. The Historical Preservation Board is being difficult." He twirled pasta on his fork. "But we'll sort it out. We always do." I nodded, pretending to listen, but all I could think about was the recording. Bring the tray down to the south tunnel. Nathan had been feeding Owen, keeping him alive, for 12 years. "Diana!" I blinked, realizing Nathan was watching me. "Sorry, what?" "I asked if you wanted to go to the farmer's market this weekend." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You seem distracted. Are you okay?" My pulse spiked. He knows, he can tell. "I'm fine," I said quickly. Just tired. Moving has been more exhausting than I expected. Nathan reached across the table and covered my hand with his. You've been working too hard. You should take a day off. Relax. His touch made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to smile. Maybe, we'll see. We finished the meal in near silence, and I helped Nathan clear the dishes. He washed while I dried, and the domesticity of it all felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body, playing the role of a wife who didn't know her husband was a monster. I think I'm going to take a bath, I said, setting the last plate in the cabinet. Long day. Of course, Nathan kissed my forehead. Take your time. I walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and locked it. Only then did I allow myself to fall apart. I turned on the shower, letting the sound of the water cover the noise, and sank onto the tile floor. The tears came hard and fast, my body shaking with silent sobs. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. Owen, my brother, he was alive. He had been alive this whole time, and I had been living with the man who had stolen him from me. I stayed there until the water ran cold, until I had nothing left to cry. Then I stood, washed my face, and pulled myself back together. When I checked my phone, there was a message from Lauren. Lauren, did you tell him? I hesitated, then typed back. Diana, no. What do I do now? The response came almost immediately. Lauren, find the entrance. Look for the old blueprints. The building has a basement access to the tunnels. I'll help you, but you have to move fast. Diana, how? Lauren, meet me tomorrow. I'll explain everything. I deleted the conversation and slipped the phone into my pocket. When I emerged from the bathroom, Nathan was already in bed reading a thriller novel with a cracked spine. He looked up and smiled. Feel better? Much better. I climbed into bed beside him, keeping as much distance as I could without seeming obvious. Nathan set his book on the nightstand and turned off the light. Good night, Diana. Good night. He pulled me close, his arm draping over my waist, and I went rigid. This was the same position we had slept in for 12 years, his body curved around mine, his breath warm against my neck. It had always made me feel safe. Now it made me feel trapped. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to Nathan's breathing slow as he drifted off to sleep. I thought about Owen somewhere below us, alone in the dark. I thought about all the nights I had slept peacefully while my brother suffered. Not anymore. Tomorrow I would find the entrance to the tunnels. Tomorrow I would find Owen. And then I would figure out how to destroy the man lying beside me. The apartment felt different when I was alone. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift of shadow. I wondered if Owen could hear me searching for him. Nathan left at 7 that morning, kissing my forehead on his way out. I'll be at the East Bay site all day, he said. Call if you need anything. I waited until his footsteps faded down the hallway until I heard the elevator doors close. Then I moved. I started with the pantry where I had first heard the knocking. I pressed my palms against the walls, searching for seams, hollow spots, anything that might indicate a hidden door. The plaster was solid. I knocked along the baseboards, listening for changes in the echo. Nothing. I moved to the bedroom, pulling clothes out of the walk-in closet, running my hands along the back wall. The building was old. There had to be access points, maintenance hatches, something. But the walls were unbroken, the floor seamless. By 9:30, I had searched every room twice. My hands were filthy, my knees bruised from crawling along the baseboards. I had found nothing. I called Lauren, my frustration bubbling over. I can't find anything. There's no entrance, no hidden doors, nothing. It's hidden, Lauren said, her voice calm but urgent. Nathan wouldn't leave it obvious. You need to check the original blueprints. The building has a basement access to the tunnels, but it won't be marked on modern floor plans. Go to the building's archive room. Walter Jennings, the building manager, has access. Walter Jennings, I repeated, committing the name to memory. He's been here for decades. He knows every inch of this place. But Diana, Lauren hesitated. Be careful who you trust. What does that mean? Just be careful. She hung up before I could press further. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the walls that had seemed so charming a week ago. Now they felt like a cage. Somewhere below me, Owen was listening to my footsteps the way I had unknowingly walked over his prison for days. I was about to start searching again when my phone rang. Mrs. Hoffman? Cameron Wright's voice came through the line, but something about it sounded off, tight, nervous. Cameron had been my studio manager for 3 years. He coordinated client schedules, handled deliveries of material samples, and kept the office running when I was out meeting with clients. He was reliable, efficient, and had never given me a reason to doubt him. Until now. Cameron, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What's up? I was just calling to confirm. Do you still want me to meet with the Henderson clients this afternoon? They're coming in at 2 to finalize the kitchen selections. I had forgotten about the Hendersons entirely. Yes, that's fine. Can you handle it? Of course. A pause. Are you okay, Mrs. Hoffman? You sound distracted. I'm fine, just busy with the move. Another pause longer this time. Okay, let me know if you need anything. I hung up, but something nagged at me. Cameron's voice had been strained like he was choosing his words carefully. And now that I thought about it, he had been acting strange lately. I pulled up my phone's call log, scrolling back through the past 2 weeks. Cameron had called me 5 times in the last 10 days, far more than usual, and twice he had mentioned stopping by the Granville Tower to drop off material samples. But I had already received those samples. They had been delivered to the studio days before Cameron claimed to bring them. Why had he been coming to the building? I called him back. Cameron, I said, keeping my tone light. I just realized, why were you at the Granville last week? You said you were dropping off samples, but I'm pretty sure we already had them. There was a beat of silence. I think I got the dates mixed up. Sorry about that. It's fine. I was just wondering. I paused, testing him. Actually, could you help me move some furniture this afternoon? Nathan's been too busy and I could use the extra hands. I'm swamped today, Cameron said quickly. Maybe tomorrow. Cameron had never turned down a request like that before. He was always available, always willing to help. Sure, I said slowly. Tomorrow works. I hung up, my stomach twisting. Cameron Wright had been to this building multiple times in the past 2 weeks, and he had lied about why. And now he was avoiding me. I set the phone down on the dresser and turned toward the bedroom, trying to piece together what this meant. But then I saw it. A small slip of paper folded once, sitting on the vanity. It hadn't been there this morning. I was sure of it. My hands trembled as I picked it up and unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, written in black ink. If you need help, don't trust the manager. C.W. C.W. Cameron Wright. I stared at the note, my pulse pounding in my ears. Cameron had been in my apartment. He had left this note. And he was warning me not to trust Walter Jennings, the very person Lauren had told me to go to. But why? Was Cameron trying to help me, or was he working for Nathan, feeding me false information to throw me off track? I thought about the phone call, the nervousness in his voice, the way he had lied about the deliveries. If Cameron was trying to help me, why not just tell me directly? Why leave a cryptic note? Unless he was being watched, unless Nathan already suspected him, or unless Cameron was the one I should be afraid of. I folded the note and shoved it into my pocket, my mind racing. I didn't know who to trust anymore. Lauren had told me to find Walter Jennings. Cameron had told me not to trust him. And Nathan was the reason I couldn't trust anyone at all. I needed answers. And if Walter Jennings had access to the building's archives, that was where I would start. But first, I needed to figure out whose side Cameron Wright was really on. The archive room smelled of old paper and buried secrets. I was about to uncover both. I found Walter Jennings in the building's management office on the ground floor, a cramped space lined with filing cabinets and maintenance schedules tacked to corkboards. He looked up from his desk when I knocked, a man in his mid-70s with silver hair and kind eyes that seemed to see more than they let on. Mrs. Hoffman, he said, rising slowly, what can I do for you? I need to see the original blueprints for the building, I said, keeping my voice steady. For apartment 12, I'm planning some renovations and I want to make sure I'm not interfering with any historical elements. Walter studied me for a long moment and I had the unsettling feeling that he knew I was lying. But then he nodded. You look just like your mother, he said quietly. I froze. You knew my mother? Catherine, yes. She and Eleanor Fairbanks were very close. Your mother used to visit this building often back before she married. This place holds a lot of history. He reached for a ring of keys hanging on the wall. Come with me. He led me down a narrow stairwell to the basement, past the maintenance rooms and storage lockers, to a heavy metal door marked Archives. The air grew cooler as we descended, and I could hear the faint hum of the building's mechanical systems. Walter unlocked the door and gestured for me to enter. The room was dim lit by a single overhead bulb and lined with shelves holding rolled blueprints, ledgers, and file boxes labeled by decade. The original plans are from 1925, Walter said, pulling a large rolled blueprint from a shelf. When the building was converted from the old Vanderbilt Hotel, the Civil War tunnels beneath the building were already here. They were used for storage and deliveries back then. He spread the blueprint across a wooden table in the center of the room, weighing down the corners with old books. I leaned in, my heart pounding, and scanned the inked lines and annotations. There, apartment 12, fourth floor. The layout was nearly identical to what existed now, but there was something marked in faint pencil behind the pantry service entrance, south tunnel access. My breath caught. Is this still here? I asked, pointing to the notation. Walter glanced at the blueprint, then at me. Most of the service entrances were sealed in the 1960s when the building was renovated, but some of the older residents say a few still exist. He paused. Why do you ask? Just curious, I said quickly, pulling out my phone to photograph the blueprint. Walter reached into his jacket pocket and handed me an envelope. Open this when you're ready, he said. Your mother would have wanted you to have it. Before I could respond, he turned and left the room, his footsteps echoing up the stairwell. I stared at the envelope, my hands trembling. Then I set it aside and returned to the blueprints, taking photo after photo, memorizing the layout of the tunnels beneath the building. When I was finished, I picked up the envelope and opened it. Inside were 2 items, a photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph was old, the colors faded. It showed 2 young women standing in front of the Granville Tower, my mother Catherine and Eleanor Fairbanks, both in their 20s, arms around each other, smiling. I turned to the note. Diana, your mother trusted Eleanor. Eleanor betrayed that trust for money. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. The note you found, CW, stands for Catherine Whitmore, a former resident from 1995, not Cameron Wright. Be careful who you trust. Walter. I exhaled, relief flooding through me. Cameron wasn't involved. The note had been a warning from someone else, someone connected to my mother's past. But the relief was short-lived. I turned back to the shelves, searching for anything else that might help me, and found a file box labeled Insurance Records, 2000 to 2015. I pulled it down and flipped through the contents, my fingers moving quickly. Most of it was mundane fire insurance liability claims, tenant disputes. And then I saw it. A death claim filed in 2010. Policyholder Nathan Cross. Claim amount $800,000. I stared at the name, my pulse roaring in my ears. Nathan Cross, not Nathan Hoffman. I pulled the file out with shaking hands and read the details. The claim had been filed in March 2010, citing accidental death. The beneficiary was listed as Nathan Cross' surviving spouse. Nathan had faked someone's death or his own and collected $800,000. And then 2 years later, he had walked into my life using the name Nathan Hoffman and married me. I flipped through the rest of the file looking for more information, but there was nothing, just the claim form and a notation that the payout had been processed. I shoved the file into my bag, my mind racing. Nathan Cross. That was his real name. Everything he had told me, his past, his identity, his life, had been a lie. If he had staged a death in 2010, what else had he done? Had that been practice for what he did to Owen? And if Nathan Hoffman was a lie, who was the man I had been sleeping beside for 12 years? I thought about the audio Lauren had played for me. Nathan's voice, cold and detached, talking about keeping Owen silent. And I thought about the insurance file, the claim, the money. Nathan Cross wasn't just a kidnapper. He was a con artist, a murderer maybe, and I had married him. I grabbed the blueprints, the envelope, and the insurance file and left the archive room, my legs unsteady beneath me. Walter was waiting for me at the top of the stairs. Did you find what you needed? He asked quietly. I nodded, unable to speak. Be careful, Diana, he said. Your mother tried to warn people about Eleanor. No one listened. Don't make the same mistake. I thanked him and walked out of the building's office, my mind spinning. I had the location of the tunnel entrance. I had proof that Nathan had faked a death before, and I knew that Eleanor had betrayed my mother. But none of that told me who Nathan Cross really was, or what he was planning to do next. Nathan was home early. He stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, waiting. My heart clenched. I stepped through the door at 6 o'clock, my bag heavy with the blueprints and insurance file I had taken from the archive room. I had rehearsed what I would say on the drive home, running through the lie over and over until it felt almost believable. But the moment I saw him standing there, everything I had practiced vanished from my mind. Where were you? Nathan asked. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, something sharp beneath the surface. I set my bag down carefully on the counter, willing my hands not to shake. I had to run out to Mount Pleasant. One of our suppliers had some new stone samples I wanted to see for the Henderson project. You didn't mention that this morning. It was last minute. They called around noon. I forced a smile. I texted you, but you must have been busy. Nathan pulled his phone from his pocket and scrolled through his messages. I don't see a text. My stomach dropped. Really, maybe it didn't go through. The signal out there was terrible. He stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he slipped the phone back into his pocket and smiled. I was worried, that's all. I called the studio and Cameron said you'd been gone since 1. Yeah, it took longer than I expected. Traffic was brutal. Nathan stepped closer and wrapped his arms around me. I went rigid, every muscle in my body screaming to pull away, but I forced myself to relax into the embrace. You've been working too hard, he murmured into my hair. You need to take care of yourself. I know, I whispered. He kissed the top of my head and released me. I picked up dinner, Thai food, your favorite. I nodded, my throat tight, and followed him to the table. Dinner was excruciating. Nathan had set the table carefully. Plates, napkins, chopsticks arranged just so. The food smelled good, but I could barely taste it. Every bite felt like swallowing glass. How's Cameron doing? Nathan asked, twirling noodles on his chopsticks. He's fine, busy with the Henderson project. Good, he seems like a solid guy. I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. Everything okay at the studio? Nathan continued. You've seemed distracted lately. Just the move, I said quickly. It's been a lot to adjust to. Nathan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I know, but we're settling in. It'll get easier. I smiled, though it felt like my face might crack. The questions kept coming, small, casual, but relentless. How was the Henderson project? Had I heard from any other clients? Was I happy with the apartment? Each one felt like a test, and I didn't know if I was passing. By 9 o'clock, I couldn't take it anymore. I have a headache, I said, standing abruptly. I think I need to lie down. Nathan looked up, concern flickering across his face. Do you want some aspirin? I already took some. I just need to rest. Okay, I'll clean up. He stood and kissed my forehead again. Feel better, sweetheart. I walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling. I pulled out my phone and texted Lauren. Diana found the blueprints. The entrance is behind the pantry, but I can't access it while Nathan is here. Her response came almost immediately. Lauren, tomorrow. I'll help you, Diana. There's something else about Nathan you need to know. Meet me tomorrow afternoon. I stared at the message, something else, as if everything I had already learned wasn't enough. Diana, what is it? Lauren, not over text. Tomorrow, be careful. I deleted the conversation and lay down on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. I could hear Nathan moving around in the kitchen, the clink of dishes, the sound of running water. I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes, the room was dark and the clock on the nightstand read 2:07 a.m. Nathan's side of the bed was empty. I sat up slowly, listening. The apartment was silent, but there was a faint sliver of light coming from beneath the bedroom door. I slipped out of bed and crept into the hallway. The light was coming from the pantry. I pressed myself against the wall and edged closer, my heart hammering in my chest. Nathan's voice drifted through the crack in the door, low, cold, speaking to someone on the phone. I know she's suspicious, he said. Eleanor called me. She said Diana was at the building's office this afternoon asking about blueprints. Silence. We need to move up the timeline. November 15th is too far out. We have to do it this week. Another pause. I don't care. If she finds Owen before we're ready, everything falls apart. We do it this week or we don't do it at all. I stopped breathing. Yes, I'll handle Diana, Nathan continued. You just make sure everything on your end is ready. I'm not losing $800,000 because you got sloppy. He hung up. I stumbled backward, my legs shaking, and barely made it back to the bedroom before I heard the pantry door open. I dove under the covers and closed my eyes, forcing my breathing to slow, praying Nathan wouldn't notice how hard I was trembling. I heard his footsteps in the hallway. The bedroom door creaked open. He stood there for a moment. I could feel him watching me. And then he climbed into bed beside me, his arm draping over my waist. I lay perfectly still, every nerve in my body screaming. November 15th, November 15th. What was November 15th? And do it this week, do what? Whatever Nathan was planning, it wasn't just about Owen anymore. It was about me. I had never hated the sound of a doorbell until that morning when Eleanor Fairbanks stood on my threshold with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Nathan left at 8 o'clock sharp, kissing my forehead on his way out. "Keep safe, love you," he said, and I forced myself to smile back, though the words felt like acid on my skin. I waited 15 minutes after he left, watching from the window until his car disappeared down the street. Then I moved. I found Nathan's toolbox in the hall closet hammer chisel pry bar and carried it to the pantry. I pulled out my phone and compared the space to the photograph of the blueprint I had taken in the archive room. According to the plans, the service entrance should be directly behind the back wall of the pantry, hidden beneath layers of plaster and paint. I pressed my palm against the wall, searching for hollow spots. There, about 3 feet from the floor, the sound changed. Hollow. Empty. I picked up the hammer and chisel and positioned the blade against the plaster. The first strike cracked the surface, sending a small shower of white dust to the floor. The second blow opened a fist-sized hole. I could see darkness beyond it, open space. My heart hammered. This was it. The entrance was here. I raised the chisel again, and the doorbell rang. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The doorbell rang again, longer this time, insistent. I set down the tools, brushed the plaster dust from my hands, and closed the pantry door behind me. My pulse was racing. Who would be here at 9 in the morning? I opened the front door, and there stood Eleanor Fairbanks holding a silver tea tray with a porcelain pot and 2 cups. "Diana, sweetheart," she said brightly, "I thought I'd bring you a proper welcome tea. May I come in?" I stared at her, my mind scrambling. I couldn't say no, it would be rude, and Eleanor was as far as anyone knew my mother's dearest friend. But the pantry door was ajar. The tools were on the floor. The wall had a hole in it. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." Eleanor glided past me, her eyes sweeping the apartment with the practiced ease of someone who had seen it many times before. She set the tea tray on the dining table and turned to face me, her gaze catching on the pantry door. "Oh, what's going on in there?" she asked, walking toward it before I could stop her. She pushed the door open wider and peered inside. The hammer and chisel lay on the floor. White dust covered the shelves, and the hole in the wall gaped like an open wound. "Diana," Eleanor said slowly, turning to look at me. "What are you doing?" I forced my voice to stay calm. "I thought I heard water dripping. I was checking for a leak." "In the pantry?" Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "That's odd. The plumbing for this unit runs along the bathroom and kitchen walls, not here." "I know," I said quickly, "but I kept hearing this sound and I thought maybe it was a pipe behind the wall." Eleanor studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled. "You poor thing. Moving stress is dreadful, isn't it? Why don't you come up to my apartment for tea, I insist. You look like you could use a break." "I really should finish." "Nonsense." Eleanor's voice was warm, but there was steel beneath it. "You're covered in dust, dear. Come up, have some tea, and then you can call a proper plumber to handle this. It's not safe for you to be tearing into walls on your own." I hesitated, but Eleanor was already moving toward the door, clearly expecting me to follow. And part of me, against every instinct screaming to stay and finish breaking through the wall, wanted to go. Because if Eleanor was involved with Nathan, maybe I could get information from her. Maybe I could figure out what she knew. "All right," I said. "Let me just wash my hands." "Of course, dear." I went to the bathroom and scrubbed the plaster dust from my skin, my mind racing. Eleanor had arrived at exactly the wrong moment, or exactly the right moment depending on your perspective. Had Nathan told her I would try to access the tunnels today? Was this a coordinated effort to stop me? When I emerged, Eleanor was waiting by the door, the tea tray in her hands once more. "Come along," she said. "You're going to love my apartment. It's a bit of a time capsule, I'm afraid, but I find comfort in beautiful old things." Apartment 24 was on the 8th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charleston Harbor. The space was stunning, crown-molding original hardwood floors, antique furniture upholstered in velvet and brocade. But what struck me most were the walls. They were covered in framed playbills, photographs, and posters from Eleanor's Broadway career. I recognized some of the shows: a streetcar named Desire Cat on a hot tin roof, the Glass Menagerie. In the photographs, a younger Eleanor stared back at me, radiant in stage makeup and elaborate costumes. "I was quite something back then," Eleanor said, following my gaze, "before age caught up with me." "You still are," I said politely, Though my skin was crawling, something about this place felt wrong, too perfect, too curated, like a museum of a life that had ended decades ago. Eleanor set the tea tray on a low table and gestured for me to sit. I sank into an armchair while she poured the china, clinking softly. "Your mother used to visit me here," Eleanor said. "We would sit for hours talking about everything and nothing. I miss her terribly." "I miss her too," I said quietly. "She was so proud of you, Diana. She always said you had her eye for beauty." Eleanor handed me a cup. "It's chamomile. Very soothing." I took the cup but didn't drink. Instead, I watched Eleanor settle into the chair across from me, her movements graceful and deliberate. "How long have you lived at the Granville?" I asked. "5 years now. Before that, I was in New York, but the city became too much, too loud, too fast. Charleston is gentler." "Do you know much about the building's history?" Eleanor's smile sharpened. "Oh, yes, it's full of stories. The Civil War tunnels, the old service entrances, the hidden rooms. This building has seen more than its share of secrets." My pulse quickened. Hidden rooms. Rumors mostly, but old buildings like this, they're full of surprises. She took a delicate sip of her tea. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. Nathan mentioned the tunnels once." "Did he?" Eleanor's eyes glittered. "Nathan is quite knowledgeable about the building. He's done work here before, you know. His firm handled some of the historical preservation projects a few years ago." I nodded, filing the information away. Nathan had worked on this building. That's how he knew about the tunnels. Eleanor's phone buzzed on the table between us. She glanced at the screen, and I caught a glimpse of the caller ID before she snatched it up. NH. Nathan Hoffman. Eleanor declined the call and set the phone face down on the table. "Spam," she said lightly. "They never stop, do they?" But her smile was too bright, her eyes too watchful. "So," Eleanor said, leaning back in her chair, "tell me, Diana, how are you adjusting to the Granville? Is it everything you hoped it would be?" I met her gaze, my fingers tightening around the teacup. "It's been an adjustment." "I'm sure," Eleanor said softly. And for just a moment her mask slipped. The warmth in her voice evaporated, replaced by something cold and calculating. Something very, very wrong. Before I reveal what I found in Eleanor's office, the discovery that completely changed this fight, please leave the number 12 in the comments if you're still following my journey. The number 12 represents the years Owen was held captive, and it's also a reminder that truth always takes time to emerge. Please note the following events contain fictionalized elements added for educational purposes. If you feel uncomfortable, you're welcome to stop here. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight, like a file drawer labeled NH, confidential. Eleanor and I sat in her living room for over an hour, the conversation drifting through safe, meaningless topics. She asked about my work, about the Henderson project, about whether I had made any friends in the building. I answered on autopilot, my mind racing, waiting for an opening. It came when her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and excused herself, stepping into the kitchen to take the call. I heard her voice drop to a murmur, too quiet to make out words, but the tone was urgent. I stood, my heart pounding. "May I use your restroom?" Eleanor poked her head out of the kitchen, the phone still pressed to her ear. "Of course, dear. Down the hall, second door." I walked down the hallway, my footsteps silent on the Persian runner. The bathroom was at the end of the hall, but just before it, a door stood slightly ajar. I glanced back. Eleanor was still on the phone, her back to me. I slipped inside. It was a small office lined with bookshelves and dominated by a mahogany desk. A laptop sat closed on the surface, and beside it a filing cabinet with brass handles. I moved quickly, scanning the labels on the drawers. Tax records, medical, Broadway contracts. And then at the bottom, NH confidential. My hands trembled as I pulled the drawer open. Inside was a thick folder neatly organized with tabs dividing sections. I pulled it out and flipped it open. The first page was a typed document, single-spaced, titled in bold, "Disassociation Plan." I read the first line and my blood turned to ice. Phase 1. Increase life insurance coverage complete, July 2024. Used power of attorney. Signed 2012 to increase D. Hoffman's life insurance from $500,000 to $2 million. Coverage approved after required medical exam, blood work forwarded to insurer T&D. Believes paperwork was for 401k beneficiary update. She has no idea. I stopped breathing. I remembered signing those papers. Nathan had brought them home in July, told me it was routine retirement planning. I had signed without reading, trusting him because why wouldn't I? I forced myself to keep reading. Phase 2. Acquire sedatives complete. 90 Ambien tablets obtained from online RX. Direct cash payment prescription forged in D. Hoffman's name. Dosage calculation 15 pills crushed equals lethal dose for 140-pound female. Combination with alcohol will ensure respiratory failure within 1 to 2 hours. My vision blurred, I flipped to the next page. Phase 3. Establish pattern of depression via Eleanor Fairbanks. E. Fairbanks will testify to police/insurance investigators that D. Hoffman exhibited signs of depression, stress, insomnia. Statements will support accidental overdose narrative. E. Compensated $50,000 upon successful payout. Eleanor, my godmother, the woman who had held me as a baby. $50,000. I turned the page, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the folder. Phase 4. Execute. November 15, 2024, 10 p.m. Administer crushed Ambien. 15 pills mixed into wine during dinner. Expected time of death, 10:30 to 11 o'clock p.m. Call 911 at 11 o'clock p.m. EMT arrival estimated 11:15 p.m. Phase 5 file death certificate. Bribe Dr. Kemper $25,000. Dr. Richard Kemper on call. Charleston General will sign death certificate listing cause as accidental overdose, Ambien plus alcohol. No autopsy required if attending physician confirms accidental death. Burial within 5 days. Insurance claim filed day 7. Payout estimated 30 to 45 days. $2 million received by end of December 2024. I stared at the page, the words blurring together. Nathan had planned my death like a business transaction. I flipped through the rest of the folder with trembling hands. There was a draft death certificate printed from a Word file with my name already filled in. Name Diana. Catherine Hoffman. Date of death, November 15th, 2024, 11:30 p.m. Cause of death, accidental overdose, zolpidem, Ambien plus ethanol alcohol. Attending physician Dr. Richard Kemper, MD. A handwritten note in the margin: Kemper will sign after body is at morgue. $25,000 cash. Beneath the certificate was a prescription bottle, Ambien 90 tablets with my name printed on the label. The pharmacy listed was Online RX Direct, a name I didn't recognize. Another note in Nathan's handwriting: 15 pills crushed equals lethal dose for 140-pound female. I pulled out my phone and started photographing everything. The plan, the death certificate, the pills. My hands were shaking so badly I had to steady the phone against the edge of the desk. I found a spreadsheet, next printed and highlighted. Timeline: 10 p.m. administer dose, 15 Ambien crushed, plus wine. 10:30 to 11 p.m. Expected time of death, 11 p.m. Call 911, 11:15 p.m. EMT arrives, 11:30 p.m. Death confirmed. Dr. Kemper on call bribed. No autopsy required. Burial day 5 to insurance claim. Day 7 to payout. 30 to 45 days equals $2 million by end of December. And then at the bottom of the folder, a copy of the power of attorney I had signed in 2012. A note clipped to it, used POA to increase life insurance. July 2024, $500,000 to $2 million. D has no idea. I had signed that document when my mother died. Nathan had told me it was to help manage my accounts while I was grieving. I had trusted him. I photographed everything, every page, every note, every piece of evidence. And then I heard footsteps in the hallway. I shoved the folder back into the drawer, closed it as quietly as I could, and slipped out of the office. I made it to the bathroom just as Eleanor's voice called out, "Diana, are you all right, dear?" I turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on my face, gripping the edge of the sink to keep from collapsing. My reflection stared back at me, pale, hollow-eyed, terrified. 3 weeks, November 15th. Nathan was going to kill me in 3 weeks. Owen was Nathan's old victim. I was the next one. This wasn't fraud. This was premeditated murder documented like a business plan. And Eleanor, my godmother, was part of Phase 3. I dried my face, steadied my breathing, and opened the bathroom door. Eleanor was standing in the hallway, her expression concerned. Are you feeling ill, sweetheart? You've been in there a while. I'm fine, I said, forcing a smile. Just a little lightheaded. I think I need to eat something. Of course, come sit down. I'll make you a snack. I followed her back to the living room, my legs moving on autopilot. She disappeared into the kitchen, and I sat on the couch, staring at the photographs of young Eleanor on the walls, smiling, radiant, beloved. How much money had Nathan paid her? 50,000 more. Eleanor returned with the plate of crackers and cheese, setting it on the coffee table. Here, dear, this should help. Thank you, I whispered. She poured more tea into my cup, smiling warmly. You look pale, Diana. Are you sure you're all right? I looked into the eyes of the woman who had held me as a newborn, who had comforted me at my mother's funeral, who was now part of a plan to kill me. And I smiled back. I feel wonderful, Mrs. Fairbanks, absolutely wonderful. Because now I knew. I wasn't just fighting to save Owen, I was fighting to survive. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But rage is molten lava, and mine was about to erupt. I finished my tea, setting the cup down with a soft clink. Eleanor was still talking something about the weather, about a new restaurant on King Street, but I wasn't listening. I was waiting. Her phone rang. Oh, excuse me, dear, she said, glancing at the screen. Work call, I'll just be a moment. She stepped out onto the balcony, sliding the glass door closed behind her. I watched her through the window, her back to me, her voice muffled by the glass. And then I saw it. Her laptop sitting open on the desk in the corner. The screen was still lit. I moved quickly, my heart hammering. I didn't have much time. I opened the File Explorer and scanned the folders. Tax records, Broadway contracts, medical files. And then Hoffman, archive 2011 to 2024. I clicked it. The folder was full of documents, scanned letters, spreadsheets, PDFs. And at the top, a subfolder labeled Correspondence, Nathan H. I opened it. Emails, dozens of them organized by date. I scrolled to the oldest message and started reading. From Nathan Cross to Eleanor Fairbanks. Date November 18, 2011. Subject mutual benefit. Mrs. Fairbanks, I know about your $220,000 gambling debt. I know the casinos are closing in. I can make it disappear. In exchange, I need information about the Hoffman family, Catherine Diana Owen, and I need details about this building's hidden spaces, the old tunnels, the service entrances. Think it over. You have 3 days. Nathan. I stopped breathing. November 2011, a year before I met Nathan. I scrolled to the next email. From Nathan Cross to Eleanor Fairbanks. Date December 10th, 2011. Subject Diana Hoffman. Tell me everything about her. Her routines, her weaknesses, her relationship with her mother and brother. Introduce us at the Christmas party. Nathan. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone as I took a screenshot. The Christmas party. I remembered it. December 2011, at the Granville's community room. Eleanor had introduced me to Nathan, told me he was a developer working on a project nearby. I had thought it was chance, serendipity. It had been a setup. I scrolled further, my vision blurring. From Eleanor Fairbanks to Nathan Cross. Date May 14th, 2012. Subject the brother. I've been thinking about Owen. The boy is reckless. He's been asking questions about you, questions Diana doesn't know about. The sister is emotional, grieving. She'll be easy to manage. The Civil War tunnels connect through the pantry in apartment 12. The entrance was sealed in the 1960s, but the door is still there, hidden behind a false wall. No one goes down there. No one will hear him. Pay off my debt first, then another $150,000. That's my price. Eleanor. I stared at the screen, the words burning into my mind. No one will hear him. Eleanor had given Nathan the map. She had told him how to trap Owen. She had sold my brother for $370,000. I took screenshot after screenshot, my hands trembling, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Behind me, I heard this balcony door slide open. Diana. I spun around. Eleanor stood in the doorway, her phone still in her hand. Her eyes flicked from me to the laptop, and her expression changed: surprise, then calculation, then something cold and hard. What are you doing? She asked quietly. I stood holding up my phone. I saw the emails, Eleanor. From 2011. You gave him the map. You told him how to trap Owen. You introduced us. The mask slipped. Eleanor's face went pale, then flushed. Diana, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. My voice was shaking, but I didn't care. You sold me. My mother trusted you. She trusted you with my life. Your mother is dead. Eleanor's voice cracked. She was dead and I had debts, gambling debts I couldn't pay. They were going to take everything. I had no choice. So you destroyed us. I took a step toward her. You helped Nathan lock Owen in hell for 12 years. And now you're going to lie about me being depressed so Nathan can kill me for $50,000. Eleanor flinched. I didn't think he would actually. You knew. My voice was ice. You did it to Owen first. November 15th, Eleanor. You'll stand at my funeral and cry fake tears just like you did for Owen. Eleanor stared at me, her hands clenched at her sides. What are you going to do? I'm going to save my brother, I said. And then I'm going to make you and Nathan pay for what you've done. I walked toward the door. Eleanor grabbed my arm. Diana, please. You don't know what Nathan is capable of. I pulled my arm free. Neither does he. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Behind me, Eleanor's voice rose shrill and panicked. Nathan will know I have to tell him. I turned back my hand on the door frame. Go ahead. Tell him. By the time he knows, Owen will be free. I walked away, Eleanor's voice echoing after me. Nathan won't let you win, he'll stop you. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to outsmart Nathan. I was going to do something he would never expect. I was going to rescue Owen tonight before Nathan even realized I had uncovered everything. I couldn't go home. Home was a trap now, and Nathan was the hunter waiting inside. I drove to the studio instead, my hands shaking on the wheel, my mind replaying Eleanor's voice, Nathan won't let you win. But I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was trying to survive. I was trying to save my brother before Nathan realized I had uncovered everything. By the time I pulled into the parking spot behind Hoffman and Company Design Studio, my phone was buzzing non-stop. 7 missed calls, all from Nathan. A text message. Where are you? Dinner's getting cold. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. Nathan had cooked dinner. He was waiting for me, playing the role of the concerned husband, the man who loved me, while planning to murder me in 3 weeks. I silenced my phone and unlocked the studio door, stepping into the dim, familiar space. The smell of wood samples and fresh paint usually comforted me. Tonight it felt like the only safe place left in the world. I locked the door behind me and sank into my desk chair, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. 12 years. Owen had been trapped for 12 years, and I had been living with the man who put him there, sleeping beside him, trusting him, loving him. I pulled out my phone and called Lauren. She answered on the first ring. Diana? I found everything, I said, my voice shaking. Eleanor's emails from 2011, Nathan's plan to kill me on November 15th, the draft death certificate with my name on it. Lauren, he's going to murder me in 3 weeks. 15 crushed Ambien pills and a bribed doctor. It's all documented. Oh my God, her voice cracked. Diana, listen to me. Don't go home, do you hear me? Don't go anywhere near that apartment. I'm at the studio. We're getting Owen out tonight. Nathan knows I'm suspicious. Eleanor's probably already called him. We can't wait. There was a pause, then Lauren said, I have a GPS tracker on Owen. I sewed it into the lining of his jacket last week when I brought food down. He's in the south tunnel basement level, about 200 feet from the boiler room access point. How is he? I asked, my throat tight. Can he walk? Lauren hesitated. I don't know. The last time I saw him, he was weak, malnourished, but alive, Diana. He's alive and he's been waiting for you. My eyes burned. How do we get to him? The pantry entrance is in my apartment and Nathan's there. There's another way, the boiler room in the basement. It connects to the old service tunnels. The Civil War tunnels run underneath the entire building. Meet me at the service entrance at midnight. There's less security then, just one guard, and he usually stays at the front desk doing crossword puzzles. Okay, midnight, Lauren, thank you. Owen saved my life once, she said quietly. Before all of this happened, your brother is a good man. I owe him everything. I hung up my hands, still trembling, and immediately dialed Cameron. He answered on the second ring. Mrs. Hoffman. Cameron, I need your help. Don't ask questions, not yet. There was a long pause. What kind of help? The kind that could get you in serious trouble. But someone's life depends on it. Someone who's been suffering for 12 years. Another pause, then quietly, I'll be there. Where? Service entrance at the Granville, midnight. Bring tools, a crowbar, bolt cutters if you have them, flashlights. I'll bring everything, he said. Mrs. Hoffman, Diana, whatever you're doing, I trust you. I hung up and sat alone in the dark studio, the city sounds muted through the windows. Cameron didn't hesitate. After everything, after I had suspected him, after the confusion over the note signed CW, he was still willing to risk everything to help me. My phone buzzed again. Nathan, again. I stared at the screen, my pulse spiking. I couldn't keep ignoring him. That would only make him more suspicious, more dangerous. I answered. Hey, sweetheart. Where the hell are you? Nathan's voice was tight controlled, but I could hear the anger simmering beneath it. I've called you 7 times, Diana. 7. I'm so sorry. I had my phone on silent. There was an emergency at the studio, a pipe burst in the back room. Water flooded the storage area. I've been trying to save thousands of dollars of imported stone samples and custom wood. I'll come help you. No, I said too quickly, then forced my voice to soften. I mean, it's under control now. The plumber's here. I just need to stay and document everything for the insurance claim. I can't leave until it's done. There was a long, heavy silence. Diana, Nathan said slowly, and something in his tone made my skin crawl. Come home. Right now. I can't, not yet. These materials are worth— I don't give a damn about the materials. His voice was harder now, the mask slipping. Come. Home. I'll be back as soon as I can, I said, keeping my voice steady. Don't wait up. Another silence, longer this time. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. We need to talk when you get home, he said finally. About a lot of things. The line went dead. I set the phone down, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped it. Nathan knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to be suspicious. Enough to be waiting. I sat alone in the dark, surrounded by the blueprints and material samples and color swatches that had once defined my life. They all felt meaningless now. All that mattered was the next 6 hours. In 6 hours, I would either save my brother or lose everything. There was no middle ground anymore. At 11:30, I locked the studio door and walked toward the Granville Tower. The streets were quiet, the tourist crowds long gone. Gas lamps flickered along the sidewalks, casting long, dancing shadows across the cobblestones. I kept my head down, my hands shoved deep in my pockets, my phone clutched tight. Every sound made me jump. A car door closing, footsteps behind me, the distant wail of a siren. I passed couples walking arm in arm, their laughter drifting on the cool October air. I passed restaurants with warm lights spilling from their windows, the clink of glasses and hum of conversation. The world felt surreal, too normal, like I was moving through a dream while everyone else lived in reality. The Granville rose ahead of me, its silhouette stark against the night sky, a Gothic cathedral beautiful and terrible. Lights glowed in scattered windows, people living their ordinary lives unaware of the hell hidden beneath their feet. Owen was inside that building. Somewhere in the belly of it, in the tunnels that ran like veins beneath the foundation, my brother had been trapped for 12 years. And Nathan was upstairs in apartment 12 planning his next move, waiting for me to come home so he could— kill me early, move Owen before I could reach him. Move Owen before. I stopped at the corner, staring up at the 4th floor windows. One of them was ours. The light was on. Nathan was awake. I turned away and walked toward the service entrance, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I prayed I would reach Owen first. I prayed we would both survive the night. The boiler room reeked of rust and forgotten prayers, a fitting gateway into 12 years of hell. I stood at the service entrance of Granville Tower at exactly midnight, my breath fogging in the cold October air. Lauren Chase emerged from the shadows first, her face drawn and pale, clutching a phone with a glowing GPS screen. Behind her, Cameron Wright appeared, carrying a canvas bag filled with tools and a heavy-duty flashlight. Cameron looked at me, his eyes shadowed with worry. Mrs. Hoffman, are you sure about this? I met his gaze without flinching, more certain than anything I've ever done in my life. Lauren nodded toward the rusted metal door. The signal's strong. Owen's 15 meters south of here, about 4.5 meters below ground. We go through the boiler room, find the ventilation shaft, and follow it down into the old Civil War tunnels. Cameron pulled a crowbar from his bag and wedged it into the lock mechanism. With a sharp twist, the latch gave way, and the door swung open, releasing a gust of stale, superheated air. The smell hit me immediately, iron mildew and something acrid that burned my throat. We descended a narrow staircase, the walls slick with condensation, our footsteps echoing against rusted metal. At the bottom, Cameron pushed open another door and we stepped into the boiler room. It was a cathedral of decay. Massive iron pipes stretched across the ceiling like the ribs of some ancient beast. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows that danced across peeling green paint. The air was thick and hot, vibrating with the low hum of machinery that hadn't been updated since the 1920s. Lauren held up her phone, the GPS screen glowing faintly. There, southwest corner, there should be a ventilation shaft. We picked our way through the maze of pipes and valves, ducking under low-hanging ducts. My hands trembled as I steadied myself against a rusted tank. Every sound, the hiss of steam, the drip of water, the groan of metal made my heart lurch. "Here," Cameron whispered, shining his flashlight on a section of wall where a heavy iron grate covered a rectangular opening. The grate was ancient, its edges eaten away by rust. Lauren knelt and examined the bolts. "These haven't been opened in decades." Cameron wedged the crowbar under the edge and leaned his weight into it. The metal shrieked in protest, then gave way with a sharp crack. We froze, listening for any sign we'd been discovered. But the only sound was the steady thrum of the boiler. Cameron pulled the grate free and set it aside. The opening was barely wide enough for a person. I stared into the darkness beyond and felt my chest tighten. "I'll go first," I said. I dropped to my hands and knees and crawled into the shaft. The metal was cold and slick with grime. The air was stale thick with the smell of mold and decay. Behind me, I heard Lauren and Cameron follow. 10 meters south," Lauren whispered. "Keep moving." The shaft angled sharply downward. My knees scraped against rusted metal. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. I wanted to scream, to turn back, but I thought of Owen, my little brother, the boy who used to hold my hand, who used to call me Dee, and I forced myself forward. After what felt like an eternity, the shaft opened into a wider space. Cameron's flashlight beam swept across crumbling brick walls. We were in one of the old Civil War tunnels, low-ceilinged, damp, smelling of earth and time. Lauren checked the GPS. 5 meters south, this way. We moved forward in a crouch. The tunnel was silent, except for the distant drip of water and the sound of our footsteps. Then I heard something else, a faint rhythmic tapping. "Wait," Lauren hissed, grabbing my arm. A beam of light appeared ahead. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering. A figure emerged from the darkness. Raymond Foster, tall and broad-shouldered, a walkie-talkie in his hand. He stopped listening. For a long, terrible moment, I thought he'd heard us. Then he lifted the walkie-talkie to his mouth. "South tunnel clear. No movement." Static crackled. Then Nathan's voice cut through. "Stay sharp. If she's coming, it'll be tonight." Raymond grunted and continued down the tunnel, his footsteps fading. We waited until the sound disappeared completely, then Lauren motioned us forward. "He's just ahead," she whispered. We crept along the tunnel until it opened into a small alcove carved into the brick. Inside, lit by a single flickering candle, I saw a thin mattress, a wool blanket, a tray of half-eaten food. And Owen. He was curled on the mattress, his back to us, his body thin and frail. His hair was long and unkempt, his clothes filthy and torn. For a moment I couldn't move. 12 years. 12 years he'd been down here in the dark alone. "Owen," I whispered. He jerked awake, scrambling backward against the wall, his eyes wide with terror. "No, please, I've been quiet. I swear I've been quiet." "Owen!" I dropped to my knees and held out my hands. "It's me. It's Diana." He stared at me, his chest heaving, his eyes unfocused. He didn't recognize me. "Owen," I said gently, tears streaming down my face. "Do you remember we used to play checkers? You called me Dee." His eyes focused slowly, and I saw something flicker: recognition, disbelief, hope. "Dee," he whispered. I nodded, my voice breaking. "Yes, I'm here. I'm going to get you out." He reached out with a trembling hand and touched my face as if he couldn't believe I was real. You're really here." I grabbed his hand and held it tight. "I'm real, and you're coming home." His face crumpled, and he pulled me into a fierce embrace. I felt his body shake with sobs, and I held him tighter, feeling 12 years of grief and love pour out of me. Lauren stepped forward, her own eyes wet with tears. "Owen, it's Lauren." Owen pulled back and stared at her. "Lauren, you look different." "I've been sober for 3 months," she said quietly. "I'm sorry I couldn't help sooner." "You're here now," Owen said hoarsely. That's what matters. Cameron moved to Owen's side. Can you stand? Owen nodded, though his legs trembled as Cameron and I helped him to his feet. He leaned heavily against me, his body weak from years of confinement. We have to move, Lauren urged. The vent shaft is just ahead. We turned toward the tunnel exit, and that's when the lights came on. Fluorescent lights flooded the tunnel, harsh and blinding. I froze my arm around Owen, my heart stopping. Standing at the mouth of the tunnel, blocking our only way out, was Nathan. Beside him stood Raymond Foster, holding an iron bar. Nathan smiled a cold, reptilian smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hello, darling," he said softly. "I've been waiting." They say a cornered animal is the most dangerous thing in the world, but they've never seen a woman fighting for her brother's life. Nathan stood at the mouth of the tunnel, his face calm and cold in the harsh fluorescent light, his eyes locked on mine. Beside him, Raymond Foster gripped an iron bar, his knuckles white. Behind me, Owen leaned heavily on my shoulder, trembling. Lauren and Cameron pressed close, trapped. "Diana," Nathan said, his voice smooth as silk. "Always so predictable. Eleanor called me 2 hours ago. I've been watching you on the security cameras since you entered the building." I stepped forward, putting myself between Nathan and Owen. "Get out of our way." Nathan laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed off the brick walls. "Or what you'll call the police, with what evidence?" I met his gaze without flinching and pulled my phone from my pocket. Eleanor's emails. The ones from 2011 where she sold Owen to you for $220,000. Your fake 2010 death certificate for $800,000 in insurance fraud. The dissociation plan you drafted to murder me on November 15th for $2 million. The Ambien prescription you forged. The $50,000 payment you promised Eleanor to testify I was suicidal. And the draft death certificate with my name already filled in. Nathan's smile faltered. "I've uploaded copies to the cloud." I continued, my voice steady despite the terror clawing at my chest. "If anything happens to me tonight, the FBI gets everything. Every email, every document, every recording. So go ahead, Nathan. Try me." His jaw tightened. "You went through Eleanor's files." "I did more than that. I photographed every page. I have Lauren's audio recording of you ordering Raymond to keep Owen silent. I have the original 1925 blueprints showing this tunnel. And I have 12 years of bank records showing payments to Raymond, to Dr. Kemper, to Eleanor. You're finished." For the first time since I'd known him, I saw fear flicker in Nathan's eyes. Then his expression hardened. He turned to Raymond and nodded once. "Take them." Raymond stepped forward, raising the iron bar. Cameron moved fast. He launched himself at Raymond, tackling him against the wall. The iron bar clattered to the ground. They grappled, trading blows in the confined space. Nathan lunged toward me. Owen, despite his weakness, threw himself forward and grabbed Nathan's arm. "Don't touch my sister." Nathan drove his elbow hard into Owen's ribs. Owen gasped and crumpled to the ground. "Owen!" I screamed. Rage flooded through me, hot and blinding. I swung my flashlight at Nathan's head with everything I had. It connected with his temple with a sickening crack. Nathan staggered, blood streaming down the side of his face. "You bitch!" He grabbed for me, but I twisted away. Behind me, Cameron and Raymond slammed into the wall, locked in combat. Lauren stood frozen, her phone clutched in her hand. "Lauren!" I shouted. "Call 911. She jolted into action, her fingers flying across the screen. "Police, Granville Tower basement. There's someone trying to kill us. Please send help." The dispatcher's voice crackled through the speaker, distant but clear. "Units are en route. Stay on the line." In the distance, I heard its sirens. Faint at first, then growing louder. Nathan heard them too. His face went white. "Raymond, we're leaving. Now!" Raymond shoved Cameron away and stumbled toward Nathan. Blood streamed from his nose. Cameron lunged after him, but Raymond was faster. The two men turned and sprinted deeper into the tunnel, disappearing into the darkness. Nathan's voice echoed back, cold and venomous. "This isn't over, Diana." Then they were gone. I dropped to my knees beside Owen, my hands shaking as I helped him sit up. "Are you okay?" He coughed blood on his lips, but he nodded. "I've survived worse than this." The weight of those words hit me like a punch. 12 years. 12 years of worse than this. "Police, is anyone down here?" A voice shouted from the direction of the boiler room. "We're here," Lauren screamed. "Help us!" Two officers appeared, flashlights sweeping the tunnel hands on their holstered weapons. The first officer, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, stopped short when she saw us. What the hell is going on here? I stood pulling Owen up with me. My husband, Nathan Hoffman, has been holding my brother captive in these tunnels for 12 years. He attacked us. He and his accomplice just fled deeper into the tunnel system. He's extremely dangerous. The second officer, younger, frowned. Ma'am, that's a serious accusation. I held up my phone, the screen glowing with photographs and documents. I have proof. Emails, financial records, audio recordings, forged death certificates, everything. The first officer stepped closer, her expression grave. She glanced at Owen, gaunt, filthy, trembling, then back at me. She lifted her radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. We need backup at Granville Tower basement level. Possible hostage situation. Suspects fled into underground tunnel system. Request K-9 units and additional officers to seal all exits. Static crackled. Copy Unit 12, backup en route. Within minutes, the tunnel filled with people. More officers. Paramedics with stretchers and medical kits. One of the medics, a young man with kind eyes, knelt beside Owen. Sir, I need to check you over. Can you tell me your name? Owen, my brother whispered. Owen Whitmore. The medic examined him quickly, checking his pulse, his pupils, his ribs. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, possible broken rib. We need to get him to Charleston Medical immediately. They lifted Owen onto a stretcher. As they strapped him in, he reached out and grabbed my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Don't leave me, he whispered, his eyes wide with panic. I squeezed his hand, my voice fierce. Never. I'm coming with you. The medic nodded. You can ride in the ambulance. As they wheeled Owen toward the boiler room, I glanced back at the tunnel. Police officers swarmed the darkness, flashlights cutting through the shadows, radios crackling with orders to search every exit, every corridor, every abandoned building connected to the old Civil War tunnel network. But I had a sinking feeling in my gut. Nathan was too smart, too careful. He'd planned this for 12 years. He knew every inch of this building, every hidden passage, every escape route. By the time they sealed the exits, he'd already be gone. Outside, the cold October air bit at my face as the medics loaded Owen into the back of the ambulance. The red and blue lights of a dozen police cars painted Granville Tower in flashing colors. Officers poured into the building. A K-9 unit arrived, the German Shepherd barking as his handler led him toward the service entrance. Lauren stood beside me, her arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. Cameron leaned against a police cruiser, an EMT pressing an ice pack to his bruised jaw. The first officer, her name tag read. Sergeant Morris approached me, a notepad in her hand. Mrs. Hoffman, I need you to come to the station and give a full statement. We'll need copies of all your evidence. I'll come, I said, but I'm going to the hospital with my brother first. You can interview me there. She nodded. I'll follow the ambulance. We'll also need to speak with Ms. Chase and Mr. Wright. I climbed into the back of the ambulance and sat beside Owen's stretcher. A medic strapped an oxygen mask over his face and started an IV. Owen's eyes found mine and he squeezed my hand again. The ambulance doors slammed shut. The siren wailed. We lurched forward. As we pulled away from Granville Tower, I looked back through the small window. Police officers swarmed the building like ants. Flashlights swept through windows. Dogs barked. Radios crackled. But somewhere in the darkness of those ancient tunnels, Nathan had vanished, disappeared like the ghost he'd turned my brother into. The question gnawed at me, cold and relentless. Where would he surface next? Owen looked so small in that hospital bed. 12 years had shrunk him into someone I barely recognized. But those eyes, those were still my brother's eyes. I sat in the pale blue chair beside his bed at Charleston Medical Center, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. The IV drip clicked softly. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm. Outside the window, the sky was still dark, the city asleep. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. The door opened quietly, and a doctor stepped in, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair. Dr. Patel, her badge read. Mrs. Hoffman, she said softly, I wanted to give you an update on your brother's condition. I stood bracing myself. Owen is suffering from severe malnutrition, dehydration, and what we believe is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Physically, he'll recover. We're administering IV fluids, nutrients, and monitoring for refeeding syndrome. But psychologically, she paused, he'll need time. A lot of time. I nodded, my throat tight. Can I stay with him? Of course, we've sedated him lightly so he can rest. He should wake around 8. I sank back into the chair and took Owen's hand. It was cold, calloused, scarred. I remembered Owen at 26, bright, full of life, always laughing. The Owen lying in this bed was a ghost of that person. But he was alive, and he was free. At 8 o'clock, Owen stirred, his eyes fluttered open, unfocused and panicked. Where? His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. I leaned forward, squeezing his hand. Hospital, you're safe. He looked around wildly, his breathing quickening. Then his gaze landed on the window, the pale morning light streaming through the blinds. Windows, he whispered, sunlight. Tears filled his eyes. He lifted one trembling hand toward the light, as if he couldn't quite believe it was real. You're free, I said, my own voice breaking. Really free. He turned to me, and the tears spilled over. I pulled him into my arms and held him as he sobbed, 12 years of darkness pouring out all at once. At 9 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. A woman in a dark suit stepped in, holding an FBI badge. Mrs. Hoffman, I'm Special Agent Rachel Torres, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I need to speak with you about your husband. I carefully released Owen and stood. The police said they'd take my statement. This is now a federal case, Agent Torres said, her voice crisp and professional. Kidnapping with possible interstate elements, insurance fraud, spanning multiple states, Georgia in 2010, South Carolina in 2024. The FBI is taking over the investigation. I pulled out my phone and handed it to her. I have everything, emails, documents, recordings, photographs, all of it. Agent Torres scrolled through the files, her expression growing darker with each swipe. This is extensive. Mrs. Hoffman, I need to ask, did you upload these files anywhere else? Cloud storage. If anything happens to me, copies go to the Charleston Police Department, the FBI, and my attorney. She nodded approvingly. Smart. We're issuing a federal warrant for Nathan Hoffman, real name Nathan Cross, and his associate Raymond Foster. Both are considered armed and extremely dangerous. We've frozen Nathan's assets and issued an all-points bulletin. What about Eleanor Fairbanks? I asked. She was arrested at 10 this morning, no bail. She's being charged as an accessory to kidnapping conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. A weight lifted off my chest. Good. Detective Martinez from the Charleston PD arrived shortly after, his face grim. Mrs. Hoffman, Granville Tower has been declared a crime scene. The basement is sealed. Forensics is processing the tunnels where your brother was held. We'll need Owen's statement when he's able. I glanced at Owen, who was staring out the window, silent. Give him time, I said quietly. At 11, Owen finally spoke. Diana. I turned. Yes. Nathan said I owed $1.75 million to a company called Apex Credit. He said if I didn't stay hidden, they'd kill me. Was that real? My stomach twisted. What do you remember about that debt? Nothing. I never borrowed that much money. I had student loans, maybe $30,000. But Nathan showed me documents, loan agreements, payment schedules, late notices. He said he'd paid the debt collector, a man named James Donovan, to keep me safe. But I had to stay in the tunnels, or Donovan would find me. Rage flared hot in my chest. Oh, and there was no debt. Nathan forged those documents. He created a fake story to control you. Owen's face crumpled. 12 years. I was down there for 12 years because of a lie. I moved to his bedside and gripped his shoulders. Nathan is a monster, but we're going to stop him. An idea sparked. I pulled out my laptop and searched Donovan Debt Recovery Solutions Boston. The website appeared professional, legitimate. I found a phone number and dialed. Donovan Recovery, this is James. Mr. Donovan, my name is Diana Hoffman. I'm calling about a debt my brother Owen Whitmore allegedly owed in 2012. Nathan Hoffman claimed he paid you $1.75 million to settle it. There was a pause. Nathan Hoffman, yeah, I remember, said he'd paid the debt in full. Wire transfer. Why? Because Nathan is a fraud. His real name is Nathan Cross. He never paid you. He forged the payment documents. I have proof. Another pause, longer this time. You got financial proof? I have his bank records. The FBI is analyzing them now. The money never left his accounts. It went into offshore shell accounts under false names. That son of a bitch, James's voice was low, dangerous. There's an emergency board meeting tonight at Granville Tower, 7 p.m. The FBI will be there. Your testimony could help. I'll be there. And tell Owen. Tell him I'm sorry. At 3 o'clock, Agent Torres returned. We've confirmed your findings. Nathan created multiple shell companies, funneled money through offshore accounts. The debt against Owen Whitmore was fabricated. There's no record of any legitimate loan. James Donovan was shown forged wire transfer receipts. Can you protect us? I asked. Nathan is still out there. There's an officer stationed outside Owen's room. We'll have agents at tonight's board meeting. If Nathan shows his face, we'll take him down. I nodded, but unease still coiled in my gut. At 6 o'clock, as the sun set outside Owen's window, painting the sky orange and gold, he turned to me. What happens tonight? I met his gaze, those eyes that had seen too much darkness, that were finally seeing light again. Tonight we tell everyone the truth, and we make sure Nathan never hurts anyone again. Owen nodded slowly. Will he come? I don't know. But if he's watching, I want him to know something. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. I'm not hiding anymore. Somewhere out there, Nathan was in the shadows planning his next move. But I wasn't the frightened wife anymore. I wasn't the woman who didn't ask questions. I was the woman who had walked into hell and brought her brother back. And I was coming for Nathan next. The community room had hosted weddings, funerals, and charity galas. Tonight, it would host a reckoning. I stood outside the door at 7 o'clock sharp, my hand resting on Owen's shoulder. He was wearing a borrowed suit that hung loose on his thin frame, his face freshly shaved, his hair still damp from the hospital shower. The doctors hadn't wanted him to leave. He was still weak, still recovering, but Owen had insisted. I've spent 12 years hidden, he'd said quietly. I need to stand in the light. Behind us, Lauren and Cameron waited, both dressed in somber clothes, their faces drawn but determined. Ahead through the glass doors, I could see the community room packed with people, more than 50 residents, their voices a low hum of anticipation. Agent Rachel Torres stood near the entrance, her eyes scanning the crowd. Other FBI agents in plain clothes were stationed at every exit. If Nathan showed his face, they'd be ready. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The room fell silent as we entered. Heads turned, eyes widened. A woman near the front gasped. Is that Owen Hoffman? Someone whispered. I thought the boy was dead. We walked down the center aisle. I felt every gaze on us, curious, shocked, pitying. Owen kept his head up, his hand gripping mine tightly. At the front of the room, Chairman Howard Gibson sat behind a long table with the other board members. He was a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. Beside him sat Walter Jennings, the building manager, looking pale and devastated. Gibson banged a gavel. This emergency meeting of the Granville Tower Board of Directors is now called to order. We are here to address a motion for the expulsion of resident Nathan Hoffman on grounds of criminal activity conducted on these premises. He looked at me. Mrs. Hoffman, you have the floor. I walked to the podium at the front of the room and connected my laptop to the projector. The screen behind me flickered to life. 12 years ago, I began, my voice steady. My brother Owen was declared dead. We held a funeral. We mourned. But Owen didn't die. He was held captive in the Civil War tunnels beneath this building. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. I clicked to the first slide. Slide 1. A photograph of the alcove where Owen had been imprisoned. The thin mattress, the wool blanket, the tray of food, the flickering candle. This is where my brother lived for 12 years, 15 feet below our apartments. In the dark. Alone. Gasps. Someone sobbed. Slide 2. The transcript of Lauren's audio recording. This is Nathan's voice, I said. Recorded 3 years ago. He's giving orders to his accomplice, Raymond Foster, about moving Owen and keeping him silent. I played a short clip. Nathan's cold, precise voice filled the room. Take the crate to the southern basement. Keep it quiet. Owen must not know his sister is above. The crowd was silent, now riveted. Slide 3. The 1925 blueprints. This shows the secret entrance to the tunnels accessible through the pantry in apartment 12, my apartment. Nathan chose that unit specifically because it gave him access to Owen. Slide 4. The 2010 death certificate. In 2010, Nathan, using the name Nathan Cross, filed a fraudulent death claim in Georgia for $800,000. He staged a death, collected the insurance, and disappeared. 4 years later, he resurfaced with a new identity and married me. Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. Slide 5. The forged debt documents. Nathan fabricated loan papers claiming Owen owed $1.75 million to a company called Apex Credit. He forged Owen's signature. He used this fake debt to justify kidnapping my brother. Slide 6. The dissociation plan. This is Nathan's murder manual, a step-by-step plan to kill me and collect $2 million in life insurance. It includes dosage calculations for Ambien, a timeline for when to call 911, and the names of people he bribed to help him. The room was deathly silent now. Slide 7. The pill bottle, the draft death certificate, the spreadsheet. Nathan purchased 90 Ambien pills with a forged prescription. He drafted a death certificate with my name already filled in. He calculated the exact dosage to kill a 140-pound woman. A woman in the third row covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Slide 8. The insurance documents. In July 2024, Nathan used a power of attorney, obtained through deception, to raise my life insurance coverage from $500,000 to $2 million. He planned to murder me on November 15th. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. Slide 9. Eleanor's emails. I took a breath. This was the part that hurt the most. Nathan didn't act alone. Eleanor Fairbanks, my godmother, a woman my mother trusted, helped him design Owen's prison. She introduced Nathan to me at a Christmas party in 2011. She testified that Owen was dead, and she agreed to testify that I was suicidal for $50,000. I read aloud from the email on the screen. The boy is reckless, the sister emotional. The building has hidden spaces perfect for your plan. A woman I recognized, Mrs. Fletcher, who lived on the 5th floor, stood up, her face red with fury. Eleanor did this. Eleanor was arrested by the FBI this morning, I said. She's been charged with conspiracy to commit kidnapping and murder. The room exploded into shouting. Gibson banged his gavel repeatedly. Order, order. The door at the back opened and James Donovan walked in, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with a hard face and a leather briefcase. He strode to the front and set the briefcase on the table. Sorry I'm late, he said, his Boston accent thick. I'm James Donovan, Donovan Recovery Solutions. I represent the creditor Nathan Hoffman claimed to have paid in 2012. He pulled out a folder. This is a forensic audit. The $1.75 million payment Nathan said he made, it never reached my company. Nathan faked the wire transfer receipts and sent the money into offshore shell accounts. He's been living off stolen funds for 12 years. James looked at Owen, his expression softening. I've been searching for Owen Hoffman for a decade. I thought he'd run off with my money. Now I know Nathan was the thief. He owes $1.75 million plus interest, total of $2.8 million. The crowd erupted again. Where's Nathan? Someone shouted. Call the police. Agent Torres stepped forward, her badge visible now. We have a federal warrant for the arrest of Nathan Hoffman and Raymond Foster. Eleanor Fairbanks is in custody. Nathan is considered armed and extremely dangerous. Gibson looked at the board members, then banged his gavel one final time. The board will now vote. Motion: expel Nathan Hoffman from Granville Tower on grounds of criminal activity. All in favor. A chorus of aye filled the room. Motion passes unanimously. Ownership of apartment 12 is revoked, pending federal asset forfeiture. The crowd began to applaud tentatively at first, then louder. People stood. Some were crying. Mrs. Fletcher crossed the room and pulled me into a fierce hug. You brave girl, she whispered. Owen stood beside me, tears streaming down his face. Lauren squeezed his hand. Cameron smiled relief written across his face. We'd done it. We'd told the truth. We'd won. And then, the lights went out. The entire building plunged into darkness. Someone screamed. The emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in dim red. And then the fire alarm shrieked to life, a deafening, pulsing wail. Panic erupted. People stampeded toward the exits, shoving, shouting. Agent Torres grabbed her radio. Suspect may be in the building. Lock it down. All units perimeter now. I grabbed Owen's hand, pulling him close. Lauren and Cameron pressed against us, forming a tight circle. In the chaos, in the flashing red lights and the screaming alarm, I felt it, the cold certainty settling into my bones. Nathan was here. In darkness, Nathan is a predator. But I'm done being prey. The community room had descended into chaos. People pushed toward the exits, their faces pale in the flickering red emergency lights. The fire alarm shrieked, relentless. I held Owen's hand tightly. Lauren pressed close on his other side. Agent Torres shouted into her radio over the noise. Fire alarm was triggered remotely. Suspect may be inside the building. All units maintain perimeter. Cameron appeared at my elbow, breathless. He'd gone to find the security office. Mrs. Hoffman, I saw him, Nathan, on the security cameras. He's in the basement. My blood ran cold. What's he doing? Came in through the service entrance. He has keys, master keys. He's heading toward the boiler room. Agent Torres grabbed her radio. All units, basement level suspect is heading toward the south tunnel area. Possible target, concealed assets. He's going for the cash, I said. Nathan withdrew $500,000 in cash months ago. I saw the bank records. He must have hidden it down there as emergency escape money. Torres's eyes hardened. SWAT move in. Suspect is armed and dangerous. FBI agents in tactical gear poured toward the basement stairs. I moved to follow, pulling Owen with me. Mrs. Hoffman, stay back, Torres started. No. My voice was steel. I'm done hiding. Owen squeezed my hand. Despite his weakness, despite the doctor's orders, he limped forward. I'm coming too. Cameron supported Owen's other side. We all are. We descended into this basement, the air growing hotter and more oppressive with each step. The emergency lights cast everything in blood-red shadows. The fire alarm was muffled down here, replaced by the hum of machinery and the drip of water. The boiler room door stood open. Inside, illuminated by a single flickering emergency light, stood Nathan. He looked like a cornered animal, wild-eyed, disheveled, blood crusted on his temple where I'd hit him days ago. His clothes were filthy, his face haggard. In his hand, he clutched a small knife. Stay back, he snarled. I stepped forward, my heart pounding but my voice steady. It's over, Nathan. The FBI is here. The building is surrounded. There's nowhere left to run. His eyes darted between us, me, Owen, Cameron, the FBI agents behind us. Nothing is over until I say it's over. Owen stepped forward, his legs trembling but his voice clear. Let my sister go! Nathan laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. The cripple speaks. Look at you. You can't even stand up straight. Owen met his gaze without flinching. I'm stronger than you think. Stronger! Nathan's face twisted with rage. I kept you alive for 12 years. You should be grateful. You kept me prisoner, Owen said quietly. There's a difference. Nathan's hand tightened on the knife. He took a step backward toward the tunnel entrance. I have $500,000 down there. Once I get it, I'm gone. None of you will ever see me again. You're not going anywhere, Agent Torres said, stepping into the light. And then from behind, Nathan, came the sound of heavy boots. The tunnel mouth lit up with tactical flashlights. 6 FBI SWAT officers in full gear emerged, rifles raised. FBI dropped the weapon, hands in the air. Nathan froze. He looked around wildly, agents in front, SWAT behind, no exits left. Drop it now. For a moment I thought he might surrender. Then his face contorted with desperation and he bolted not toward us but deeper into the tunnel. Suspect fleeing south in pursuit. The SWAT team poured into the tunnel after him. We heard shouts, the thunder of boots, the clatter of something metal hitting stone. And then silence. We waited in the boiler room, the seconds stretching into minutes. 10 minutes, 15. I held Owen, my heart hammering. Lauren stood beside us, pale and silent. Cameron paced, his hands clenched into fists. Finally, a voice crackled over Agent Torres's radio. Suspect in custody. Repeat, suspect in custody. Relief flooded through me so powerfully my knees nearly buckled. The SWAT team emerged from the tunnel, and between them, stumbling and handcuffed, was Nathan. His face was bloody from a fall, his clothes torn. He limped heavily, one ankle twisted. When he saw me, pure hatred burned in his eyes. You think you won, he spat. You'll never be free of me, never. I walked forward until I stood directly in front of him. I met his gaze without fear. I'm already free, I said quietly. You're the one in chains now. Nathan lunged forward and spat at my feet. The officers yanked him back hard, slamming him against the wall. That's assault, one officer growled. Add it to the list. Agent Torres stepped forward, her voice cold and formal. Nathan Cross, also known as Nathan Hoffman, you are under federal arrest for kidnapping, identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and assault. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Nathan struggled against the cuffs, his voice rising to a scream. I'll appeal, I'll get out, and when I do, the SWAT team dragged him toward the exit. His voice echoed through the basement, growing fainter. You'll pay, all of you, I'll make you. The door slammed shut. Silence. I stood there trembling and then my legs gave out. Owen caught me, pulling me into his arms. I collapsed against him and finally broke down. 12 years of lies. 12 years of darkness. 12 years of believing my brother was dead. And now it was over. It's over, Dee. Owen whispered, holding me tight. Really over. I thought I'd lost you forever, I sobbed. No. His voice was gentle, steady. You saved me. You saved both of us. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. I watched as Nathan was loaded into a federal transport van, his face pressed against the barred window, still shouting something I couldn't hear. The van pulled away, its lights disappearing into the Charleston night. Behind me, Granville Tower stood silent. One by one, the lights came back on first. The lobby, then the second floor, then the third, climbing higher until the whole building was ablaze with light. The building that had been our prison was finally just a building. I turned to Owen, who stood beside me with Lauren and Cameron. His face was thin and pale, but his eyes were clear. What happens now? He asked. I looked at the tower, then back at my brother. Now we rebuild, together. Freedom, I realized, isn't about where you live. It's about who you become while fighting to survive. And I had become someone strong enough to bring my brother home. The hardest part of surviving isn't the fight, it's learning to live in the silence after. At 10 o'clock, we returned to Charleston Medical. Owen needed rest, his body still fragile, his mind still processing 12 years of darkness compressed into 6 days of light. The nurses settled him into the same room, connecting him to an IV again, checking his vitals with practiced efficiency. I pulled a chair close to his bed and sat. For the first time since we'd found him, we had time. No FBI agents, no chasing Nathan, no presentations or arrests, just us. Owen looked at me, his eyes clearer than they'd been in the tunnel. Tell me everything, Dee. What did I miss? I laughed, though tears stung my eyes. I don't even know where to start. Start anywhere. So I did. I told him about how the world had changed, not the technology he half remembered, but the things he'd missed. COVID-19, the pandemic that locked the world down for 2 years. Everyone was isolated, I said quietly, quarantined in their homes, and all I could think about was you alone in the dark. I thought maybe you felt what the rest of us finally understood. I told him about friends who'd married, friends who'd moved away, friends who'd died, about how Charleston had changed, new buildings rising, old ones torn down, about how I'd built Hoffman and Company Design Studio from nothing, an interior architecture firm that carried our family name. It was how I kept you alive, I said, my voice breaking. Our name, I never let it die. Owen reached for my hand. I heard you sometimes, footsteps above my head. I'd knock on the pipes hoping you'd hear me, but Nathan had soundproofed most of it. I did hear something, I whispered. In the apartment, sounds in the walls. I thought I was imagining it. You weren't. I was always there trying to reach you. We sat in silence for a moment, holding hands across 12 years of absence. There was a soft knock at the door. Lauren stood in the doorway, hesitant, her hands clasped in front of her. Am I interrupting? She asked quietly. Owen looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since the rescue. Come in. She stepped inside, and the air grew thick with everything unspoken between them. They'd been married once. They'd loved each other once. And then Nathan had destroyed it all. Lauren sat in the chair across from Owen's bed. I don't know how to apologize, she began, her voice trembling. I was so weak. The opioids, Nathan's manipulation, I let him control me. I should have fought harder. I should have known. You were a victim too, Owen said gently. Nathan controlled all of us. That's what he does. I should have been stronger. You saved me when it mattered most, Owen said. You brought Diana the recording. You helped her find me. That's what counts. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. I've been sober for 3 months now, going to meetings every day. I want to be someone you can be proud of. Owen's expression softened. I'm already proud of you, Lauren. You fought your way back. That takes more strength than you know. She crossed the room and they embraced, tentative at first, uncertain after so much time and pain, but then genuine. I looked away, giving them that moment. At 11, Agent Torres stopped by with updates. She stood at the foot of Owen's bed, her notepad in hand, her expression professional, but not unkind. I wanted to give you both the legal rundown, she said. Eleanor Fairbanks has been charged with conspiracy to commit kidnapping, accessory to fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. She's looking at 7 to 10 years, possibly more, depending on what else we uncover. I felt a cold satisfaction. Eleanor, my godmother, my mother's closest friend, had sold us all for money. What about Nathan? Owen asked. Nathan Cross, also known as Nathan Hoffman, has been charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder. He's looking at 25 years to life federal prison, no possibility of parole. 25 years. Maybe life. It wasn't enough for what he'd done, but it was something. His assets have been frozen and will be liquidated, Torres continued. James Donovan will be compensated for the fraudulent debt, and Owen, you're entitled to significant restitution as a victim. The court will determine the exact amounts. What about the building? I asked. Granville Tower. Nathan's been permanently banned from the premises. As for you, Mrs. Hoffman, you have the right to remain in apartment 12 or relocate. The building's HOA has expressed support for you staying if you choose. I looked at Owen, then back at Torres. I'll stay. This building doesn't belong to Nathan. It belongs to those who survived him. Torres nodded approvingly. I think that's very brave. At midnight, Cameron arrived carrying takeout bags from a late-night diner. He set them on the table by the window and grinned sheepishly. Figured you must be starving, he said. I stood and pulled him into a hug. Cameron, thank you. You risked everything for us. He shrugged, but his eyes were bright. You gave me a job when no one else would, Mrs. Hoffman. You believed in me when I had nothing. This is the least I could do. You're not just an employee, I said firmly. You're family. His smile widened. Family. I really like that. Later, after everyone had gone, after the nurses dimmed the lights, and the hospital settled into its quiet nighttime rhythm, I lay on the reclining chair beside Owen's bed. The hospital had brought me a blanket and pillow. I wasn't going home. Not tonight. Maybe not for a while. Owen was already asleep, his breathing slow and even. I watched him in the dim light, his face still too thin, still marked by years of suffering, but peaceful now. I thought about Nathan locked in a federal holding cell. I thought about Eleanor sitting in her own cell, perhaps finally understanding the weight of her betrayal. I thought about my mother, Catherine, who had tried to warn me and died before she could. I wish you were here to see this, Mom, I thought. You tried to tell me about Eleanor. I should have listened. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 6 days, maybe for the first time in 12 years, I didn't dream of fear or darkness. I dreamed of Owen at 26, laughing full of life, playing checkers with me in our mother's kitchen. His voice was bright, his smile genuine. Your move, Dee. When I woke in the pale morning light, disoriented for a moment, I turned my head. Owen was there, really there, not a ghost, not a memory, real. Sleeping in the bed beside me, his chest rising and falling steadily, his hand resting on the blanket where I could see it. I reached out and touched his hand just to be sure, warm, solid, alive. And for the first time in 12 years, I let myself believe it was real. Autumn in Charleston had never been so beautiful, or perhaps I'd forgotten how to see beauty while living with a monster. It was November, not the 15th, not the date Nathan had chosen for me to die, but early November when the air turned crisp and the leaves blazed gold and crimson before falling. I walked through the courtyard of Granville Tower, leaves crunching beneath my feet, and residents greeted me with warmth. Good morning, Diana. How's Owen doing? I smiled a real smile and answered. I belonged here now. Not as Nathan's wife, not as a victim, as myself. I climbed the stairs to apartment 12. The door opened to a space transformed. We'd gutted it completely, repainted every wall, replaced every piece of furniture, scrubbed away every trace of Nathan's presence. The pantry wall had been permanently sealed, the tunnel entrance behind it filled with concrete and rebar. What had once been a gateway to 12 years of hell was now just drywall and paint. The guest room had become Owen's bedroom. Sunlight poured through the windows, huge unobstructed windows I'd had installed during the renovation. Light everywhere, always light. Owen emerged from his room, and my breath caught. He looked so much better. He'd gained 15 pounds. His face had filled out the hollows beneath his cheekbones, softening. He'd shaved, and he wore glasses, now reading glasses he'd needed for years, but never had access to. He carried a newspaper and a mug of coffee. Morning, Dee, he said, setting the coffee on the kitchen table. I made a pot. You made coffee? I grinned. I'm impressed. Lauren taught me. We sat at the table by the window, the morning sun warming our faces. Owen looked different in daylight, more solid, more real, less like a ghost. The university called again. he said quietly. They want me back. A research position, ironically, in Civil War history. They want me to write about my experience, about the tunnels. Will you? He was quiet for a moment. Someday. Not yet. But the truth needs to be told. People need to understand what coercive control looks like, how it happens, how someone can be imprisoned in plain sight. What will you say? He looked at me, his eyes clear. That even in the deepest darkness, hope survived. Because of you. My throat tightened. I didn't. You did. His voice was firm. For 12 years I held on because I knew you were up here living your life. Even when Nathan told me you'd forgotten me, I didn't believe it. I know my sister. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I never forgot, not one day. The doorbell rang. Lauren stood in the hallway holding grocery bags. I brought ingredients for your mom's soup, she said, smiling at Owen. Diana gave me the recipe. Owen's expression softened. You're going to make mom's soup? I'm going to try. No promises it'll be edible. We all laughed. Lauren had been coming by more often, slowly, carefully rebuilding what had been broken. She and Owen weren't rushing into anything. They were learning each other again, one conversation at a time. It was tentative and fragile and beautiful. That afternoon I went to Hoffman and Company Design Studio on King Street. Business had exploded in the past month. The media attention, tasteful articles about survivor Diana Hoffman had brought an influx of clients. People wanted to support me. People wanted to work with someone who understood resilience. I was in the middle of designing a series of residential spaces for a trauma recovery center. Light-filled rooms with soft textures, open layouts that never felt confining. Escaping darkness into light, the director had called it. The project felt like exorcism and healing all at once. Cameron managed the front desk, looking happier than I'd ever seen him. He waved as I passed, already on the phone with a potential client. Later, my phone buzzed. A text from Cameron with a photo of new fabric samples and wood finishes for the Recovery Center project. These just came in. Thoughts? I smiled. Family came in many forms. That evening, I met James Donovan for coffee. He'd stayed in Charleston to finalize the legal proceedings. We sat outside a cafe on Broad Street, the air cool and pleasant. The court finalized Nathan's asset forfeiture, James said, stirring sugar into his coffee. After my company recovered the debt plus restitution for Owen, there's $400,000 left. It's yours. I shook my head. I don't want Nathan's money. It was never his, James said firmly. It was stolen from your family. Take it. Use it for something good. I was quiet for a moment, then an idea formed. I'll start a fund for victims of domestic violence and coercive control. I'll name it the Catherine Hoffman Fund after my mother. James smiled. She'd be proud of you. That night I stood on the balcony of apartment 12 looking out over Charleston. The historic district glowed in the twilight, church steeples silhouetted against the fading sky, gas lamps flickering to life along cobblestone streets. Owen joined me, leaning on the railing. What are you thinking about? He asked. Things I used to take for granted. Freedom, sunlight, being able to walk out the door whenever I want. I had all of it, but I never treasured it until I had to fight to get it back for you. You gave me more than freedom, Owen said quietly. You gave me hope. For 12 years I survived because I knew you were up here living your life. Even when Nathan said you'd forgotten, I didn't believe him. I knew you. I never forgot, not one day. We stood in silence, brother and sister, watching the city lights bloom. People ask me if I'm angry. If I hate Nathan for what he did, hate Eleanor for what she enabled, hate the years that were stolen. The truth is more complex. I am angry, of course I am, but more than that, I'm grateful. Grateful that Owen survived. Grateful that I found a strength I didn't know I had. Grateful for Lauren's courage, Cameron's loyalty, Walter's wisdom, James's justice. Nathan wanted to destroy us. Instead, he forged us into something stronger. Granville Tower still stands, its Gothic arches and Civil War tunnels a testament to survival through dark times. We stand too. Owen and I, Lauren, Cameron, all of us who refuse to let evil win. November 15th came and went. I'm still here, still breathing, still fighting, still free. And that is the greatest victory of all. That night, we cooked dinner together, Owen, Lauren, and me. Cameron texted photos of new design concepts for the studio. Laughter filled the apartment, warm and genuine. I glanced at the pantry wall, sealed now, just a wall, nothing more. Lauren poured wine. Owen told a story about his physical therapist. Cameron sent a string of laughing emojis. Normal, beautifully, impossibly normal. I fell asleep that night with the windows open, letting the Charleston breeze carry away the last echoes of 12 years of darkness. Tomorrow, Owen would attend his first therapy session. Tomorrow, Lauren would celebrate 4 months of sobriety. Tomorrow, I would design a nursery for a client who'd just escaped an abusive marriage, a room full of light and hope for her new beginning. But tonight we were simply here, together, alive, and finally impossibly beautifully, free. Looking back, I see how family betrayal can come from those we trust most. Eleanor, my godmother, chose money over loyalty, turning betrayal into a weapon that nearly destroyed us. Nathan weaponized love itself, proving that family revenge doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it wears the face of a husband. The hardest lesson, family revenge, drove Nathan to imprison Owen for 12 years. Yet God gave me strength I never knew I had. In my darkest moments, when I thought I'd lost everything, faith whispered, "Keep fighting." I'm grateful Owen and I survived what was meant to break us. Don't be like me. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't let loneliness make you vulnerable to manipulation. Don't assume family betrayal only happens to other people. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Ask questions. Demand answers. My advice: guard your heart, but don't let fear close it completely. Build your own strength before depending on someone else. Know that coercive control hides in plain sight. It doesn't always look like chains and dungeons. Sometimes it looks like a charming smile and a carefully constructed lie. Family revenge and family betrayal taught me that survival isn't the end, it's the beginning. Freedom isn't a place, it's who you become while fighting for it. If this story moved you, please comment below. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe to this channel for more true stories of survival and hope. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Please note, upcoming stories contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences.